where the industry seems to be it's been pretty slow in as far as like picking up after the strike and everything.
I would say I think it's just slower. Like I feel like it's just not met our expectations.
Yeah. Maybe
I don't know
that's
that it's like slow. I think everyone just expected we were gonna have 45 projects filming again, and instead we only have 25. I'm so excited to dive into this conversation with film and TV actor Kurt Yue about how we maybe need to have not a plan B, but multiple plan A's, how you're going to be your best actor when you're not worrying about finances, and we're going to dive into some of his incredible projects and some of the things that he's learned along the way. Welcome to Get Scene Unscripted. I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. We are going to dive into acting insights, meet industry pros, and master the business. Don't forget to subscribe and share. We're keeping you behind the scenes and ahead of the game. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is Get Scene Unscripted, and I'm your host, Jesse Malinowski. I want to dive right in, but before we do, I got to give a shout out to some of you that are leaving comments and 5-star reviews. Thank you. And we are going to shout out, is it Banana Ya? With an underscore. It says, I listen to the podcast to start my week, and it always gives me the motivation to go after my personal goals. It's informative and relatable for the everyday actor. Keep them coming. You know what? Good advice. We will keep them coming. And here's another one at you right now. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And if you love this episode, make sure to give us a review and let us know what you thought about it. Today, everyone, we have another incredible, super successful actor on the podcast. It is Mr. Kurt Yue. What's up, Kurt? How are you, man?
What's up, Jesse? Thanks so much for having me.
Dude,
Happy to be here.
You're so welcome. And, we were chatting a little bit before we got started. And I'm just, when I look at you and your career and some of the other things that you're doing, and we're going to dive into it, I just love it so much. And I think you are, like, honestly, man, like, when I think of, like, I want to say, like, the epitome of, like, what an actor should look like. I honestly, like, think of you, dude. I'm not even kidding with, like, you've booked a lot of roles. It's obvious that you say yes. And then you're also doing other things. And you're like, it's not my whole life. And I'm not trying to, like, only give everything I have to acting. And that comes with its ups and downs. How did you discover that was important to kind of have all of that and balance it all really well?
That's a great question. And I do very much believe in that, of not making acting your whole life. I think it is important. If you're going to try to pursue this, it should be an important, and you should treat it as an important part of your life and give it everything that you can. But also, in order to have some sort of balance in your life and not drive yourself crazy, I think it is important also to have other things in your life that fill your cup, so to speak. I heard you talk about that with, was it with Chase? I think you guys talked about filling your cup with acting, but then all other parts of your life as well. And for me personally, I would love to say that there was a point in my life where I was like, oh yeah, I came to this realization, and I knew that this was the way to do it. But I'll say, I feel like I was lucky in the sense that I didn't really come to this career the way some people do, in that, just when they were out of the womb, they're like, yeah, I want to be an actor, right? And having that dream and pursuing it since they were a kid. I came to it later in life, and it was never, I don't know how else to say this, but other than it was never like my dream to become an actor. And I think because I came through it by almost finding it accidentally, as I kind of dropped into this acting class just for fun, I enjoyed it. I started doing more of it, and then it just kind of progressed into what it is now. So I never really got into the mindset of, all right, I have to pursue this as my one thing. Especially because I started in a smaller market in Cleveland. There was really no opportunity. I don't think I knew any single person in that market that was doing it full time as their only source of income.
Right.
So like when I got into it, my peers that were doing it and the people that were even, the most successful in that market, they weren't doing it as their full-time, like, only source of income. So I never looked at it as a path of like, all right, I should give up everything and just pursue acting. So as I continued to, grow in my career, even after I came down here to Atlanta, my mind has always been, all right, pursue acting as much as I can, but also, let's continue to pursue my other interests. And I feel like now, and I don't know when I came to, this mindset, but at least in the past few years, my mentality from a financial standpoint now, from as far as my acting career goes, is that I would love to be, and I don't say that this should be everybody's mindset, but it's just what mine is. I would love to be financially independent of my acting income, right?
Yeah.
Completely. No matter how much I'm making, right? It's just if I can just see all of my acting income as a bonus, on top of what I'm making outside of acting, then I think it allows me to pursue it much more freely. I think it's got to be so difficult if you're going to an audition and you're like, I need the money, right? You go to an audition thinking that you need the money for rent or for groceries or for whatever, and you're desperate for that. And it affects your performance. You're thinking about all these other things rather than what your character's motivations and all that stuff.
Yeah,
right?
you can't like really be free in that
Exactly.
moment if those other pressures are on you.
You're afraid to take the risks, right? You're afraid to take risks and really play. You're trying to play it safe because I need to book this job. So that's why I've kind of shifted into, if I can be completely financially independent of my acting income, and that really allows me to not only be able to, take risk as far as my performances go, but also like I'm a lot more free to say no to things when I'm not feeling it, when it's a project that I'm not really super interested in, but I'm not just thinking about, career. I need to build so that I can make more money. I think it allows me to come at it from a healthier angle.
If you're an actor, you're going to want to hear this. We have our 3-day in-person conference coming up, and you will not want to miss it. Each day, there'll be different breakout workshops where you'll get to work with some of the best instructors here in the Southeast, along with building your actor community in a really great way. You're going to be surrounded by the top industry pros here in the Southeast. And most importantly, you're going to be able to build a step-by-step game plan and action plan to move your acting career forward. So there's a discount and more information below in the comments or the description. So head there right now to grab your ticket, and we'll see you at the best conference here in the Southeast. What about for the actor that, I guess so like we were talking about how you used to be like a coder and that, you did like software engineer stuff. Yeah. So let's say you were still doing that. What about the person that might be like, well, then you're not an actor if you're focused on making your money as a software engineer or whatever, like then you're a software engineer and acting is your hobby. And I don't want it to be my hobby. I want it to be my thing. Like, I guess the question is, how do you, as an actor wanting to make that other money that you're talking about, like, how do you find that in a fulfilling way that doesn't feel like you're like in that 9-to-5 bullshit job?
Well, I think there's a couple different angles here. I think one is just the mindset of, it's the feeling of I'm not an actor if I'm doing something else. And I think that's just BS, right? I feel like, look, a lot of people have, multiple interests and are pursuing them all at the same time. And why not do multiple things? Why not do everything that you can? And to whatever level and whatever degree that you're comfortable with. It's just like, somebody who, when I was working in the corporate world, and there are people that were that played in bands, and they would go and play at like local restaurants and things like that, and it would be their gigs. They're not touring the country. They're not like Taylor Swift or whatever, right? But they're still musicians. I would still call them musicians, And so I think getting that, shifting your mindset and shifting your mentality from thinking that just because I'm also doing something else doesn't take anything away from the fact that you're also pursuing acting fully, and you can still call yourself a professional actor when you're doing it. But then also to the question of you're not doing something that's soul sucking, right? I think that. So I'll speak for me personally. I credit finding my acting classes for opening my eyes towards just like thinking creatively in general, because I went to school for software. I worked in the corporate world as a computer programmer for almost 10 years, and I feel like, I don't know if brainwashed is the right term, but when we go to like high school and college, and like it's kind of like the idea is implanted into us that you're going to get this degree, and whatever degree that you exit college from is what you are expected to pursue for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I never questioned it. And so I got my computer science degree. I got my my first job in software, and then it was just like, all right. And then I even went in to get a master's in I got my MBA because I was like, all right, the next step is like to be in management in my field, right? So it was just like, all right, I'm just going to climb the corporate ladder because I had that tunnel vision of like, this is, because I got that degree, this is the only thing that I could do, And just taking those acting classes for fun to begin with opened my eyes in terms of like thinking creatively for as far as the acting craft, but also, I was seeing other people in class that were, because they were pursuing acting, they had these side hustles, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. So it really opened my eyes into like thinking more creatively in terms of my life, in terms of my finances, and now what I tell people is that, I mean, look, there's got to be 100 different ways that people are making money out there right now that you and I have never even heard of. Like we didn't even know that that's a possibility, right?
Totally.
And so if we could just like get out of that tunnel vision and start looking and start finding those other ways that are out there, and take those chances. And there are definitely opportunities and jobs out there that are not soul-sucking that you could enjoy, maybe not as much as you enjoy acting, but still not something that you would hate to be doing. And you can continue doing that as your side hustle as you pursue acting, or as like I don't know what the word would be, that's not a side hustle, but like I like to say you don't have to necessarily have a plan B, but you can have multiple plan A's. Like you could have multiple things that you love to do and continue to pursue them all at the same time. Because look, when you're pursuing acting full time, we're never on set full time. We're not on set 40 hours a week unless you're a series regular. But even then, you have a season, and then the season ends, and you have a lot of time off. So there's always time, I think, to pursue other interests.
And I love the idea of two or multiple plan A's. It doesn't have to even be two, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so smart. And I think that, yeah, so much of it is just like mindset, right? It's just like, I loved what you said is like, it doesn't mean that you're not an actor. And I loved the analogy of like, you knew people that are like doing different gigs at restaurants or bars or something. And it's like, you still call them a musician, right? And can you elaborate more on, you said that acting class kind of like opened your mind to creativity, and like you were just like on this track, and then that class essentially kind of like opened you up a bit.
Yeah.
I'd love to dive into that and like what insights or aha moments you kind of had that would be able to help some other people that might feel like they are stuck in this like, well, I have to just be a server or a bartender or drive for Uber, and I feel like this sucks, and I wish I could find a way to find that creativity to create another plan A that's in association with my current plan A.
Yeah. Well, I can give you some background first on as far as how I found the acting class, because I wasn't necessarily looking for specifically an acting class at the time. So this was after college. I had been working in the corporate world in Cleveland, Ohio. Me and my best friend from high school, who was also working corporate at the time, I think we were both working at banks, like different banks. He was actually a banker working in the, in the corporate offices, and I was working in IT at a bank. So we had our 9 to 5 jobs, and we were always looking for something to do after work. And at first it was just like, hey, let's just go to happy hours, and then that just got kind of old. So we started looking for other things. We joined Toastmasters at one point, and because that was like a free thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we joined Toastmasters, and that was it was all right. It was kind of interesting for a little bit, and then we kind of dropped off of that. But then
Hold on,
day,
what does Toastmasters look like? I've always heard Toastmasters helps people just like
public speaking.
Yeah, public speaking. Yeah. So like it's just a bunch of people, and it's like everybody get ready to get in front of everyone and talk. Like
in a way, it's similar to acting classes where depending on the week, some people are assigned certain topics. They may have a prepared speech, right? So it's kind of like if you had an on-camera audition class where you brought in something to come in and audition with. And then other people would, probably more like an improv class, you would have like impromptu questions that you would have to be able to stand up and talk about for like 30 seconds or whatever, right? So every weekly meeting is something like that. I think we met at like the library, and there were maybe 15 or 20 people in there, mostly like older retired folks.
Right.
They were just looking for something to do. So me and my buddy, we were like in our 20s, like we didn't really fit in as much, but it was still fun. It was fun hanging out with those people and kind of learning a little bit about that world. But then, so that's kind of the genesis of us like just searching for what do we do after work to get us out of this like cubicle, day-to-day mindset. And one day we happened to be walking by, actually one of our other good friends from high school, he was in the military. He happened to be on leave from a tour in Iraq at the time. So he was home for like a few days, right? So of course he's home for a couple of days. He wants to go like party with his buddies. So we were out at the bar, and it was 2 a.m. We were leaving a bar, when it was closed, and we walked by this little acting studio that was on that street. And obviously, they were closed, but me and my friend that was working with me, we were like, hey, maybe we do something like this, this might be fun. So we kind of just took a picture of the email address that was on the door, and the next day just shot an email, and the next week we took our first free audit of that class. And, knowing nothing about acting, they were like, hey, so this is a Meisner class. And we're like, okay. Or like, I don't know what Meisner is or whatever. And we got really lucky in that class was like a legitimate acting class, right?
Okay. I'm like, dang, Meisner off the bat.
Yeah.
Meisner off the bat, huh? Dang.
Yeah. But it was legitimate in that, not only was she teaching a legitimate acting technique, but also like she knew what she was talking about. She had some understanding of the industry as well, right? Because our teacher she had lived in LA for a while, pursued acting in LA, taught in LA, but then eventually moved back to Ohio where she was from because she was taking care of her dad. Her dad was sick at some point, so she opened up her own acting school. And so that was the school we found. Had no idea that it was going to be like a legitimate thing, and so that's how I got into it. But then like talking about like what I wish I knew, or at least like what I didn't know before I got started. I think similar to a lot of people, maybe I just assumed anything we saw on TV was made in Hollywood, right? Not even like putting two and two together that like a local car dealership commercial would be made locally, not in California, right? But I just assumed like everything's made in Hollywood. So even when I went into the acting class, I was like, okay, this is probably just like something to do for fun, right? It's not like nobody's going to this and like getting acting jobs. Like I wasn't thinking that at all until I got into the class, and like part of the opening of the class, people would talk about the industry a little bit, and people would talk about, hey, I had this audition, and I had this blah, 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 and I worked on this commercial. I was like, whoa, really? here in Cleveland. You don't go out to California for that, you know? So like that part of it was really eye-opening. And this is where, you know, I see the questions that I get sometimes on my YouTube channel or, you know, comments on my website where, you know, people that don't live in specifically Hollywood are like, I don't know how to get started because I'm not in California. You know, I'm not in Los Angeles. And I imagine they have the same thought process that I did. They don't even know that there is the opportunity to kind of build your career doing local commercials, industrials, or whatever, or plays, right? That's in your local community that you can kind of start to build your career up from there. And then, you know, the other big thing that kind of, it took a while. I don't know when it really sunk in, but just understanding that the whole industry, it's a business of opinions, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's all opinions. And at one point you just have to realize that there's obviously no way to satisfy everyone, and there's no way to guess what other people's opinions are going to be. So you kind of just have to trust yourself and to trust that, you know, do what you think is right as far as like auditions or acting or whatever it is, whatever your performance is, and make those choices, stick to them, and then hopefully, you know, it lines up with the person making the casting decision or the person who's directing. You guys are on the same wavelength. You know, if it is, great, you guys are going to work well together. If it isn't, you probably wouldn't be working well together anyway. So it wouldn't have been a great job for you to get.
Yeah. Where's the line? Because, you know, I can't agree more with that statement and that idea. But then I also think about like some of the actors that are essentially, I'll just say like green. And when I say green, you know, like maybe less than 3 years experience, right? And they're super confident, which I love. I never want to take anybody's confidence, you know, but it's just like, you are not ready, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're showing up like, I'm ready to go. This is great, but it's like, you still have more work to do, right? So it's like, you have this idea of like, show up and do you, but then there's this other side of it that's like, well, but you do got to be ready. So how can someone know, or like, how do you walk that line?
Yeah. I think that's one of the hardest things. And this is kind of goes to where there's no one path in this industry, right?
So true.
So I don't think there's a single way for like a group of people to pursue this. And I think for some people, depending on someone's personality, depending on what they're comfortable with, maybe some people want to train for a little bit longer, right? And for somebody else, maybe it's just like, hey, let's just, you know, ready, fire, aim, right? Let's just get right into it and see what happens. I think even for the people that are like gung-ho about it, that are just ready to, you know, jump into the fire, cool. You know, there's no better teacher than experience. But also, I think if you're going to do that, obviously continue to train, continue to be able to improve yourself and find coaches and teachers and stuff like that to be able to help you so that you're not, if you are making mistakes, you're not just going to be continuing to make those same mistakes for all of your future auditions and performances. Because look, I mean, I started auditioning for real projects like through an agent about a year into my acting classes in Ohio. And I remember some of my old auditions and looking back on them, they're like so cringeworthy in terms of like the choices that I made. There was one that I remember, and some of my friends like telling this story more than I do. But it was a commercial for a deli in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
All right. And so I went into in smaller markets, and I talked to the agents here in Atlanta, and they said this was what Atlanta was kind of like prior to like the film industry coming in. Where there weren't really casting directors. You know, the agents kind of did both jobs a little bit.
Oh, wow.
You would go into the agent's office, and they would record your auditions, and then they would kind of work as the casting director with the client, and they would send those auditions to the client. And so I went to my agent's office to audition for this deli commercial. It was called Eileen's Chip Chopped Ham. I'll never forget this audition. And so they wanted the person to, when they said chip chopped ham, they would do like this chop and say it.
Okay.
Right.
All right, let's see it.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm thinking in my head, because we read books and hear from other actors that say you got to do something different. You got to make a strong choice and stand out or whatever. So I'm like, I'm not just gonna do a chop. I'm gonna close my eyes and do it. And so I did the whole audition with my eyes closed. It was either I did it all with my eyes closed, or I pretended I was blind, or something like that. Something that just made no sense.
Right.
The choice made no sense. And I remember my agent, who was taping me, was like, "All right, that's cool. Let's just do them where you're not doing that."
Yeah.
And I thought I was gonna blow them away.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, "This is amazing." So yeah, I was definitely the guy that was like, "All right, let's just dive right in."
You know what? I'm blind.
Yeah.
I'm blind. Yeah.
But continue to take acting classes and learn from my mistakes and learn that, all right, that's probably not the best choice. You make a strong choice and make sure it still fits the story.
Yes, you want to find evidence to to support your choices.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you didn't get that one.
It would be amazing, right? If I said, no, actually, I got it. They had me be blind.
Yeah. But I mean, you have so many awesome credits. When it started to click for you in beginning to book, what were some kind of like big eye openers that you discovered that you're like, dang, wish I knew that when I was doing the Pittsburgh Deli audition?
Yeah. I think, this is, again, like how a lot of, I would say, newer actors and veteran actors alike. I mean, sometimes even myself, like we're listening to other actors talk, or teachers or coaches, agents and casting directors, right? And podcast format, right? With a lot of times people are listening and they're hoping to find that one thing, right?
Yeah.
What is he gonna say that I can implement and do exactly that?
And then I'll start to
that'll
book.
be the switch, right? It's
dude,
just
you're
like
so
an
right.
on-off switch. And so it just, I wish it were there, and I wish there was something like that. But just, similar to anybody else, we all have our ups and downs. I'm super fortunate, like right now, currently, where the industry seems to be it's been pretty slow as far as like picking up after the strike and everything.
I would say I think it's just slower. Like I feel like it's just not met our expectations.
Yeah. Maybe
I don't know
that's
that it's like slow. I think everyone just expected we were gonna have 45 projects filming again, and instead we only have 25 or whatever the number is.
So so it's slower, and I have like my audition spreadsheet that I've saved since I started. So I've had it since like 2009. And so when I look back to past January since I've been in Atlanta, the numbers are lower in terms of like number of auditions. So I feel like it is a little bit slower, but I've been lucky these couple of months in that some of my prior projects, like pre-strike, have picked back up. And have been bringing me back. And I'm like, oh, this is great. So I may not be booking, right, new things, but I'm continuing to work, which is awesome. But has not been the case throughout all my career. Like a couple years ago when it felt like everybody was working and everything was like really fast, that was like my longest drought of my career. So like it's hard to evaluate like, all right, I must have made this change because everything's going well right now. And when things aren't going well, it's like we start to think, what am I doing wrong? But it's probably nothing. It's probably we got to kind of look at it in terms of, in the long term, in a much bigger picture. But I will say that one of the things, and again, who knows when it kind of clicked for me in terms of this idea, but we've all heard people talk about, or people say the phrase "you are enough," right? And I remember hearing that, and a lot of times it's like in one ear and out the other. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, whatever, it's just like mumbo jumbo that people are saying. But the more I started to realize that, all right, I don't have to become any sort of character, right? And I really credit a lot of my initial like Meisner technique training in that, because like a lot of times Meisner, gets a bad rap of like it's just a bunch of screaming and yelling, right? It's just you're throwing furniture and
Yeah,
everything like that, right? But the initial exercises of Meisner, those first, the repetition exercise, and then building on from that is really all about just like you don't have a script, you're not trying to play a character, you're just focusing on your scene partner and just doing a
just
natural
react.
listening and response and reaction. And can you do that as yourself?
Yes.
Right? Without putting on any sort of facade. And I feel like now my approach to, any audition that I get or any characters I get, my first baseline is just, it's just going to be me in this situation. I'm just going to put Kurt in this situation and that's it, and see where that goes, right? 90% of the time, this is like all I need, right?
Yeah.
And this is where, back to like that Chip Chop Ham audition, I was like, if this was Kurt in that situation, I wouldn't be doing that, right? I wouldn't have my eyes closed. It would just be a lot easier now when I take an audition, it's just, I feel like you can have a career by just being yourself. And it's not easy like that. This is where acting is hard in that, being able to be on camera or on stage and be relaxed and not worry about what an audience is thinking of you and everything like that, and be able to be present with your scene partner. That part does take training, and it does take practice, and it does take getting good at. But if you could just be yourself in a situation and react as you would normally, first of all, that's going to be the most real you can ever be. Any sort of characterization is inherently going to be a little fake, right? And obviously the best actors, the Oscar-winning actors, are able to do that so well that it doesn't look fake. But if we could just, focus on that part first, then that's half the ball game, more than half.
100%. 100%. And yeah, I think you couple that with what you were talking about earlier in when it comes to finances, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of like leads me to you create, and you talked about getting like comments on your YouTube channel. What made you want to start it's Acting Career Center on YouTube, yeah?
Yeah.
And what made you want to start that? And I know we kind of chatted about it before we got started, but I mean, you have 220,000 subscribers there. During the pandemic is when you really kind of buckled down and committed to it. But before that, you started it. So like what made you kind of want to do that? And did you see it as being as successful as it is today?
No, I didn't see it growing to what it has become, because when I started it, I was still in Ohio, and it was originally called Small Market Actor was the name of the channel. And the idea behind it came from, just like a lot of people that have found my channel, I had searched for acting stuff on YouTube, right? When I first started taking classes, I was like, I want to learn more about this outside of class. So I started, I was buying some acting books, searching on the internet. And at the time, this would be back in like 2013, 2014-ish. The only person that I remember seeing on YouTube that had any sort of presence that was talking about it was Amy Jo Berman.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And she had a lot of great advice. I learned a lot from like watching the videos on her channel. But as an actor in Cleveland, I found that almost all of her advice was tailored towards Hollywood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had the idea of like, hey, I think I could give some information to people that live in small markets. And it's really all like what we talked about earlier. It's all the stuff that I didn't know. It's like I didn't know that they would be making commercials here, right? That people would be making money as actors in little towns way outside of Hollywood. So that was the original idea for the channel, was just because I wasn't looking to move out of Ohio at the time. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make this channel and make it only for actors in small market and just kind of have that niche, right? So that was the idea. And I made a handful of videos, and it was more on me that I just was not as consistent with it when I first started it. But I got lucky there. So around 2015, 2016, like, YouTube and all these different companies, they change up their algorithms and stuff all the time, right? And they change up how they work. Well, at that time, YouTube had this thing where, how now you can, when you finish a video, you can turn autoplay on. So it just autoplay the next suggested video.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm watching, like, I like to watch a lot of sports talk, right? So if I'm watching a sports talk video on YouTube and I'm like doing the dishes or whatever, and I have my phone off to the side, I'll just turn autoplay on so that when that 5-minute video ends, if I'm not done with my dishes, it'll just autoplay the next one. I don't have to do anything. So I think around that time was when they were first testing this autoplay. And it wasn't an option to turn it on or off. They just, like, when they first released it, it was just on for everybody. And somehow one of my videos got linked to this very popular acting video of, like, this teacher. I can't even remember what it was, but it was a teacher teaching in class. It was like a 10 or 20-minute video of a teacher teaching some acting that had, like, millions of views. And somehow my video became, like, the automatic autoplay after that video.
Oh, wow.
So one of my videos got a lot of traction in the beginning. I don't want to say in the beginning, but after it had been up for a couple years. But, like, no views. And then all of a sudden there was this huge spike. And it just, it got a bunch of views. So that's when I saw that, oh, okay, like, people are actually responding to my stuff. Not because I was posting it and getting subscribers, but it was just through YouTube's algorithm. Somehow people have found me. And then it wasn't until the pandemic, when I had already been in Atlanta for about 4 years, I started re-uploading videos consistently, rebranded the channel to Acting Career Center because I was no longer in a small market.
Yep.
And that's when it grew a lot. And partially because I had the time to make the videos, partially because everybody was at home during the pandemic and just consuming content, and partially because there was a lot of people that were reevaluating their careers, during the pandemic and potentially looking at, their dreams that they had and wanting to pursue acting again.
When you started the YouTube channel, your idea was just like, I'm going to just help and serve? Because, I mean, I would imagine now the YouTube potentially, like, makes you enough money, like, essentially is that thing that you talked about, like that other thing beyond acting where acting is now a bonus, but now the YouTube channel can, like, sustain you. So, like, were you like, I'd love to be able to make money from the YouTube, or were you like, I just want to help people?
Yeah, both. I mean, I kind of looked at it, I saw, because when I saw Amy Jo Berman's channel, she's obviously a businesswoman. I could see what she was doing. She had courses and all this other stuff too, including her YouTube channel. So I knew that if I had a successful channel like hers was at the time, like, that was a possibility. But it certainly wasn't like I didn't make courses right from the beginning. Like, it was initially, I just wanted to make those videos showing people that were like me that didn't know, we don't know what we don't know, right? So it's first sharing that information. And then I did always kind of have that business mindset of, like, if this becomes successful, I could end up pivoting into using it and making a business out of it. I would say right now, so there's obviously, we're kind of getting into the weeds of this internet marketing stuff, but there's obviously different ways of earning an income off of a YouTube channel. And the main way is through the YouTube partnership program, where you become a YouTube partner with their advertising. So any ad revenue that gets generated directly off of your video, you get a cut of, right? I'd say even with 220,000 subscribers, my monthly ad revenue is in the hundreds of dollars. It's not like I'm not making $1 million or even thousands off of it. So, but what you do have is that you have an audience, right? So now through the audience and via my email list, now I can turn that into, if I want to teach workshops, if I want to do whatever, like, that is where it can become a more sustainable business. But YouTube is ultimately the driving force of all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just so important now. I mean, and if you think of, it's kind of like circling back a little bit, but I mean, if you take like a Ryan Reynolds, right? He's not just acting, he's doing all sorts of other things, right? Like he's probably made most of his money through entrepreneurial acts than the movie business now. So it's like, one, don't feel ashamed to be doing anything else. The next aspect of that is like, I feel like these days of like the huge movie star or studios like matching your quote or something like that, like they're just gone. And like if you think of, if we rewind years ago, it's like you would go to a movie that had a big name in it because like that name kind of like owned the audience. Like there was a big fan of it. So I say all that to say is like, this is a way for you to own your audience and for you to say like, if I can do a YouTube channel or literally serve in any way, help other people in any way, and then get their email you don't even have to know right now, right? Like, but at some point you can offer some sort of service or product, or like you said, workshop, anything down the line. And then that's where you have the ability to sustain yourself in an additional way of making money as an actor. And I just think that's like so smart right now for performers to like kind of figure that out.
Yeah. And I think, I feel like it's the perfect, the way for performers to,
I know.
Because we're not working on set all the time. So like, if we want to get that creative energy out, like why not start a podcast or start YouTube or start whatever, that you could be creative and you're not relying on an agent or a casting director to give you the opportunity to do something. Like you create your opportunities, you create your own stuff. And, to your first point too of Ryan Reynolds and all these stars that have their side hustles, like that kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier of don't feel like you're any less of an actor when you have these other things going on, because all these celebrities are doing it too. And part of it is that they're, they know that they're not in complete control of their own acting career either. Yeah. Like they can control their acting, but unless they are executive producing and funding their project, and it's not
marketing it
and all of it, right?
Like
if they're putting forth all the money towards it, unless they're doing all of that, there's other people involved. And there's other people that are going to make decisions that may cause a project to go forward or not. And so I think I saw, I think it was like Issa Rae was talking about in an interview how she, at the time, she was like opening up a coffee shop, or she started her own coffee brand or something like that. And somebody had asked her about why she was doing it. And she was just very honest. She was like, look, I love Insecure, and Insecure has been great to me, but it could end, like it could get canceled, and then I'm out of a job. Right. And so even somebody else, in her position is looking for these other sources of income. And I think that, that's not just advice for actors. I think that's just good advice for anybody. It's just good, sound financial
Not putting
advice.
all your eggs in one basket. Yeah.
Yeah. To have multiple sources of income is just sound financial advice. So I think that's, and then obviously, going back to how Ryan Reynolds or all these stars are doing, whether it's a brand or starting a restaurant or starting a clothing line or all these things. It's just another way to grow your finances off of something else. And then it doesn't have to be soul sucking or anything like that, right? You grow your finances without necessarily affecting your acting career.
Get Scene Studios was founded in helping connect actors with industry pros. We bring in the top Southeast agents and casting directors to really help you get seen by the people that matter. And we really focus this on two different ways, everyone. In one of our signature in-person classes or workshops called the Get Seen 360, you get to have a self-tape evaluated, then you get to work on the callback, and then you also work on a cold read. you spend 5 hours with an industry pro in the Get Seen 360. And then for our online class, and this signature workshop we have is called the Perfect Submission. And this mimics the Actors Access submission process, where you send in a headshot, a self-tape, and a demo reel or clip. And so this is an incredible way to really get feedback on what that submission is looking like. And so everyone, as a thank you for listening, every single month we're going to choose one winner, and you get to choose one of these classes. Any class that you want will be absolutely free, and this will be our way of saying thank you so much. So all you got to do is head to the pinned comment below, put in your name and email, and you will be entered to win. All you got to do is put in your email one time, and you will live there forever, which means if you submit this month, you could win 3 months from now, 4 months from now. So go ahead and head to that pinned comment now, and good luck. Yeah. I think the reason why this isn't just actors, it's probably anybody, right? Yeah. They don't go after other things just because it feels overwhelming, right? They're like, I just don't know how to do it, and I don't even know where to start or how to start. Or so what advice would you have for someone like getting them out of that comfort zone to just, like you said earlier, that, experience, is like the best training, like just diving in, like what advice do you have for them? That it's like, you just got to try it. You got to take some sort of action.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, all of this stuff is like everything that we've been talking about is all fitting together right now because look, YouTube is out there.
Yeah.
And I've learned so much. I was working as a headshot photographer in Atlanta for a couple years when I first moved down here. And I was not a headshot photographer in Cleveland. And I came down here and I was like, I gotta find other ways to make money. And I just learned everything about photography off watching YouTube videos.
Wow.
And, picked up a camera, started taking headshots of my roommates and just learned and then started like shooting headshots for people around here. And I feel like the age that we're living in, there is so much free content out there that we don't have to spend any money on.
It's incredible.
And if you have the time and the dedication to like actually learn something, there's so much information out there to learn it. And then it's about, when you feel comfortable doing it. And I get it. It could be scary and it could be hard to make that decision. But I am a believer in that ready, fire, aim mentality.
Me too.
Right?
Me too.
Just do it, see what happens. And because you're going to learn most from your failures, right? You're not going to learn from your successes, right? The mistakes that you made are going to teach you the most. So the more that you do, the more opportunity that you give yourself to make mistakes, the more opportunity that you're going to be able to be successful in the future, I think.
I love that. All right, man, you got so many awesome credits. Tell me one of your favorite ones and a lesson you learned from it.
All right, I got a couple fun stories. So
like, did I see on your YouTube channel that you were like, this is what I learned from Black Widow when I filmed in London?
Yeah.
Damn, let's go.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were going to say that one, but now
that wasn't even going to be one of them.
I feel like you got to talk about that one now, but I want you to talk about the other ones you wanted, but I literally just thought of that and I was like, man, that, like, I feel like that little aspect, like that's like a dream, right? Like I'm I live wherever I am and they're taking me to London and like, oh my God, like.
We'll get to that. This is one where when I was still in Ohio, is one of my favorite stories from set. And that's not necessarily a favorite credit because there wasn't even a credit. I was a stand-in on my first TV show set that I got to work on. There was a show, I don't know if you remember it, called Survivor's Remorse.
Oh yeah, I do remember that.
So it was filmed here in the Southeast.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait, that wasn't in Ohio. That was here.
It was filmed in the Southeast before I had come down here.
Oh, okay, got it.
Like, I think this was like 2011 or 12 or something like that.
I think it was I think it may have been 12 or 13.
Yeah, something like that. So LeBron James is an executive producer on that show. And there was an episode on one of their seasons where he was going to guest star. And instead of bringing LeBron down south, they brought the show up to him.
Oh my gosh.
So they brought the show up to Akron to have LeBron guest star. And I think he was only in one scene. There was this poker room scene where LeBron was playing himself, and he's playing poker with all the main cast, sitting around a table. And I didn't really watch the show, but I just from working on it that one day, there was one of the series regulars was an Asian guy. So a local Cleveland casting director reached out to me, and she was casting background and stand-ins. And she was asked me if I wanted to be a stand-in for that show. And she was like, LeBron's going to be there. I'm like, of course.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to do it. I've never been on a TV set, and I get to meet LeBron. Awesome. So I go there that day. They cast 6 of us to be the stand-ins for that poker room scene. I think that was the only scene that they were shooting. Maybe not. So they cast the 6 of us, and we're our little group of stand-ins are just kind of hanging out together all day on set, just hanging out at Crafty, eating, snacking, and stuff like that, as you do. And at one point, once they're getting ready, the PA comes over and asks for second team. We had never heard that term before.
Oh, shit.
None of us, because in Cleveland, we rarely ever have any big projects. It's all local commercials and industrials, and there's never stand-ins, right? So none of us had heard the term before. We just ignored her.
They're like, second team. You're like, great.
Yeah. And so she didn't know who she was looking for. She just came into the room and asked for second team, and then she left. Then she comes back again in 5 minutes and looks directly at us and said, "Hey, we're looking for second team." And then we're like, "Oh, we don't know where they are." So she leaves again. And then eventually, that one of somebody, maybe the AD or somebody who knew who we were, get over here.
Oh, geez.
So, but it's again, kind of goes to, you don't know what you don't know. These are things that you just learn from experience. And it just it was kind of like a perfect storm of, when are you ever going to have 6 stand-ins where none of them have done it before?
Yeah.
Right. And none of them had heard that term before. And that's where that happened on that set. So it was one of my favorite experiences for that story, but
yeah,
otherwise, and LeBron was cool. I said hi to him. So I was like, all right, there's I got to exchange one word with LeBron.
There you go.
And then another favorite story of mine is right when 2015, when I had signed with Houghton here in Atlanta one time when I came down here to visit. I came down here to visit, planning to move down here, and had arranged a meeting with Houghton, signed with them, and in the next few months I was going to move. But during that span, my agent, Misty, was like, "Hey, we could start sending you stuff to self-tape when you're in Cleveland if you're able to travel." And I said, "Yeah, all right, start sending me stuff." So I had taped for this show called Shots Fired. Remember that?
Yep, I remember it. Yep.
It only had the one season. It was filmed in North Carolina. And I read for this lawyer role. Taped it. Forgot about it because it was weeks later. And then got a call from my agent and said, "Hey, you remember that lawyer role you taped for? Can you be in North Carolina tonight to shoot tomorrow?"
Whoa.
Right. So knowing what I know now, most likely it's that somebody was hired at some point. Something fell through.
Right.
Somebody got sick or whatever. And so
you were the next choice.
I was back up.
Yep.
And because there was no way they were going to hire someone last minute like that, So long story short, I go to North Carolina that night. I had gotten on the plane without a final confirmation yet.
Oh,
I was
wow.
waiting and waiting and waiting. I was like, I can't. It was too late. So I got on the plane, got the confirmation when I landed that you're booked.
Wow. Good for you, man. Good for you.
Yeah. So, and then I got the call sheet that night, and I look at it, and 1 and 2 on the call sheet are Richard Dreyfuss and Helen Hunt. So, and then me.
So you're like, what?
So it's these 2 Oscar winners and me in this scene. In my first speaking TV show. Prior to that, it was Survivor's Remorse as the stand-in that didn't know what to do. Right.
Oh man.
And now I have this, and this scene on that episode, it was these two powerhouse actors meeting for the first time on that show. So you knew it was an important scene for the show.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah.
were like, yes, we can't wait for this amazing scene. And then I have to come in and deliver all this lawyer jargon as Richard Dreyfuss's attorney. But one of the things that I loved from it was, once we did the rehearsal, they blocked out the scene, then they sent us to our green room. Luckily in this set, because sometimes they have like the stars have their separate green room, right? And everybody else like sits separately. We were just like sitting in the living room of the house because it was on location. So we were just sitting in the living room where they weren't using. And it was really cool watching those two actors talk about their relationship and talk about their motivations and it was like, I'm like connecting the dots of like, this is what we learn in class. Like this is just like, they're just doing the same thing. They're not using like magic Oscar juice or something like that, right? They're just using fundamentals that we're doing in class, but they're just able to execute it so well, after doing that script analysis. So that was really cool to see. But then once we started filming the scene, I just remember being so nervous, and I had like this little monologue to deliver and in the clip, you can actually see me at some point as I'm talking. I kind of shift in my chair. It's because I just had like so much energy. I needed to get it out. And when after they did the master, they actually went to the coverage of those two actors first before they came to me, which is usually, I feel like it's the opposite. They give the stars the last, just so they get more time
they get
to
the
rehearse,
practice.
right?
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, they did their coverage. Maybe it was because the angle they already had set up. So they did their coverage and they came to me afterwards. And I was so lucky that both of them at some point flubbed lines and had to, start over. Because I couldn't even imagine if both of them just nailed it in one take. And they're like, all right, Kurt, it's on you now. So both of them flubbed lines and I calmed down so much.
To be like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
You just start over.
Yeah.
They're going to edit this, which you like are not thinking of when on your first time on set. You're just
My God.
I'm a disaster.
Right. Right. I was not I was in my head the entire time, but ultimately ended up a pretty decent scene. There were a couple times where I feel like I swallowed my words and you could hear that a little bit, but worked out pretty well.
Did you mess up your lines?
I did.
You did?
Oh yeah, especially once it got here.
Yeah.
Like in the master, I was fine, right? And then on their takes, I was fine. But once it gets here, and it happens to everybody. I feel like it still happens to me. I think it still happens to me on set where, as soon as the camera's right in your face, you feel it. You feel that. You feel that pressure. I kind of talk about it how, it's like in sports. There's no way to like if you're playing basketball, for instance, like to simulate 50,000 fans screaming at you and the pressure of the end of the game. You got to hit a free throw or something, right?
Such a great point. And that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Not quite as much pressure because you could just do another take, but no, that's a great point. You can't really simulate that. Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing, you can go to class, feel the pressure of the cameras recording you, your teacher and your classmates are watching you and have that, trying to be able to still perform while you have that nervous energy. So I do think, that's why classes are still important. We try to do our best to simulate it. But at some point, you're going to have to play the game. And then that's where the experience is the best teacher. Because the more you do that, the more comfortable you're going to get with it. And then also, it's just so, again, it's always harder when you're starting out for so many reasons. And one of the big ones is that when we're day players, we show up, right? Everybody already knows each other. We're like the new kid in school. We don't know where to sit in the cafeteria. It's like all of that feeling of everybody's a family and we're just like showing we don't know what to do. And then having to be able to perform in that situation. And like, this is our one time, our one chance to do it. And now that I've been lucky enough to be able to, be a recurring character on some shows, you could definitely feel like, oh, this is so much easier now. Once you're comfortable with everybody, once you're comfortable with the set and the people and how everybody works, now it just feels like, hey, I'm just going to work every day and
Yeah, those one date co-stars are like almost harder.
Yeah, they feel like,
Or they're like hard in a different way.
yeah.
All right, well, now you got to do Black Widow since I mentioned
Right.
it.
right. So Black Widow was wild because you know how when we get those Marvel auditions that they're always that they're going to be secretive. It's just Marvel
definitely.
Marvel 15 or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you what it is. So all it said was it's a Marvel show or movie, and so I taped for it, and I do remember in the breakdown it did say that it films in Georgia and in the UK. But I didn't really think too much about it. I was like, oh, that's interesting, but just taped for it like any other audition, sent it off. At this point, I'd been doing it for long enough now where I feel like I'm pretty good at just forgetting about it afterwards. So I think I had forgotten about it by the time they reached back out and pinned for it. But it was another one of those things. And this was one of those situations where it wasn't like somebody else was already cast. It was like, hey, you're pinned for it. Be ready to leave for London tomorrow if necessary.
Whoa.
All right. They're just like trying to figure everything out. But it ended up I had an extra couple of days. But it was kind of one of those dream scenarios where you got to really learn on the job because they hired 6 of us from Atlanta to be William Hurt's character, Thaddeus Ross, to be his kind of henchman in the movie. So anytime he shows up in the movie, they were going to be like, we're supposed to be his muscle.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a big dude, but we're going to be carrying guns in the background. So we're supposed to help him look a little bit stronger because he had kind of gotten up there in age at that point. So he was looking and these characters, our 6 characters were cast well into the filming of the movie. So I think it was a decision after the fact. I think it was after the director saw like how he was looking on camera. He was looking a little bit older. They decided, all right, we need to make him look stronger visually.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
So they ended up casting 6 of us out of Atlanta, flew us out to London, first class, which I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, you're like, heck yeah.
Not expecting that. And then, put us up for 2.5 weeks. So we were there for 2.5 weeks. We were on set for 3 days.
Wow.
They were just so spread out. So our first day we landed and we had some like rehearsal, weapons rehearsal and stuff like that. And then the second day was our first filming day. After that second day, we had 10 days off. And so we were leaving base camp, and the second AD, she was looking at the schedule, and she was like, oh, you guys have some time off. And we're like, yeah, we're not coming back until, whatever day. And she goes, let me see if I can get you a driver in a van one of these days and take you around London, wherever you want to go. I'm like,
yes.
This is where you realize like Disney has like unlimited money.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they could just do whatever they want. So yeah, that was incredible. It was a paid vacation,
Right.
and we were working on a big Marvel project. It was an incredible experience. Got to bond with those other 5 actors that during that time, and then also, that was right before the pandemic. It was just like it was so lucky because that was in 2019. If that was just a few months later, it would have just all been shut down.
Wow, yeah.
That was like late 2019. And then the movie itself got pushed back because it was supposed to release in 2020.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
It ended up getting pushed back. So there was a lot of interesting scenarios that came about from that project. But it was amazing. It was an amazing experience.
I bet. I mean, I know that we could go on forever because you just have so many awesome credits and I'm sure just incredible stories. But I do think this leads us to our spotlight sign off,
All right.
which is 5 questions to end strong. The first one is, what's something you're incredibly grateful for today?
Oh, I am grateful for, so I think I was telling you earlier, but we didn't talk about it here. were playing with your dog earlier.
Yeah.
And I am grateful to be getting my dog back from my mom.
Yeah.
Not today, but very soon. I have been dogless in my home, and she is she's my companion, and I can't wait to get her back. So.
Dogs are the best, aren't they?
They're the
They're just
best.
so fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, second question is, what is a TV show, film, book, or event that really changed the trajectory of your life?
I mean, it has to be the first acting class that I took in Cleveland, because I mean, going from cubicle life software developer to it wasn't like that day it changed, but starting that day, it completely changed my life to working that software job to now working as an actor and entrepreneur and everything. Like nothing that I'm doing now, I would I be doing had I not started that acting class that day. So
What was it about the class that made you either like hook you in or make you go back?
It was just fun. I mean, that was it. It was different than sitting in my cubicle and working on a computer all day, right? And now that I've been doing more of this, either on the acting side or sometimes, as we do here in Atlanta, a lot of us are collaborating with our friends, making our own passion projects and short films and stuff, right? I love the fact that this industry is so collaborative, and it's such a collaborative art form. And again, so night and day from me just at my computer, for 8 hours a day. The only interaction they'll have is like answering emails from people or maybe a meeting every once in a while, right? So the way, the energy that was like in the acting class, I think really drew me back to come back for more, partially just to kind of clear my mind from what I was doing in my day job. And I think the fact that I did it for over a year through pure enjoyment before I even thought about, right, pursuing an agent or making money off of it, kind of solidified to me that I was like, all right, this is something that I want to continue doing, even if that at that point there was no thought of like continue doing to the point where I'm switching careers, but I just wanted to do more of it is all I knew at that time.
Nice. Yeah. I can see that. Just like almost like any change at that point was going to be nice.
Yeah.
The third question is, what's something in your routine or morning routine that you really cherish?
I wouldn't say it's a morning routine,
Okay.
but an afternoon routine. If I can sneak in an afternoon nap, it's the best. Especially because I don't sleep great at night. I sleep through the night, but I usually wake up after about 6 hours. So without an alarm clock, I'm just awake after 6 hours, and I can't really fall asleep again after that.
Oh, wow.
So normally 6.5 hours. If I can get over 7 hours, I'm ecstatic. Usually by afternoon, I'm starting to feel a little tired, and if I have the time, I would love to sneak in a little bit of a nap.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Sometimes I'm like naps are like super powerful. Then sometimes I feel like they do the opposite, and then they like crush me.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're only getting 6 hours of sleep at night, you 100% need a nap. 100%.
Depends on the day, exactly. Depending on the day. Some days I take a little nap, I wake up, I'm like, all right, ready to roll again. Other times I'm like, I just want to stay here for 2 more hours.
Yeah. What's something you're currently working on in your life and you're trying to improve?
Getting off social media. Or not necessarily getting off it entirely, but kind of, I'm using the whatever apps on your phone, the limiter apps on your phone.
Okay.
Where you can only limit, X amount of time per day, or like turn on focus mode where you can't even because sometimes it just becomes, you're like a drone. You open up your phone.
Yeah,
you
it's
open up.
nuts.
Yeah, right. So like if
Wait, what's this limiter app? Like what? The app disappears after you do it for a certain amount of time or something?
Yeah, it turns it off. It's so I have a Android, so I don't know. I'm sure app, iPhones. I want to call them Apple phones.
Yeah, Apple phones. Yeah.
I'm sure iPhones have the same thing, but it's just in the Android app is called Digital Wellbeing, and you can select what apps that you want to limit a time to. So I could limit Instagram to like an hour or whatever, and then it'll also warn you, hey, you have 15 minutes left of this app for the day. So if I'm just like doom scrolling and be like, oh yeah, let me turn this off so that I can go do something else and then actually like use it when I want to message someone, like actually for something normal. So been trying to use that because I mean, we've been seeing more and more studies and stuff like that of how it's just affecting, the whole world, the whole population in terms of mental health, right? In terms of causing more depression among people. And luckily I don't feel any of those. I don't feel like I'm depressed from it, but hopefully I don't want to get to that point before, I start to do something about it. So, and then we've even seen like, what's the Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, right? Doesn't let his kids use an iPhone.
I know, it's pretty wild, right?
Yeah. And yet they're making their strategic decisions on how to get people to use their products more. But they know he's got to know that there's something bad about it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be taking it away from his kids. So.
Yeah, I love the point that you made on like sometimes we just become these like auto drones and like you literally are like, oh, let me answer this text message, and then all of a sudden you're on Instagram. It's just like this auto thing that happens. Yeah. One of the things that I'll do, although I'm going to look in this digital well-being app, but I'll just scramble my apps.
Oh.
Yeah. So then it breaks the pattern.
So you don't know where to find it on your phone?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you begin to find it again, but you realize that your auto thing now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what am I doing right now? You know what I mean? It just breaks your pattern.
Okay.
So sometimes I'll do that.
Is it like a one-click scramble, or are you like moving it?
No, I'll like move everything. Yeah. I'll just
I think
move
that's a good idea, especially just to move it out of the home screen.
Yeah.
I think is at least one, click enough to like get your mind to kind of think.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, last question, Kurt. It is based on everything that we talked about, but maybe something that we missed as well. Okay. If you wanted the listeners to get one piece of advice, what is it you want to make sure they get?
So let's, bring it back to acting specifically. I really believe in that being yourself mentality first, because this goes back to the comments that I get on my YouTube channel, especially of newer actors, younger actors, and I can't say that I probably thought this as well in the beginning of like you just think of acting is becoming somebody else, right? Because one of my YouTube videos, I asked the question of like, hey, tell me what interests you about acting and put it in the comments, right? And a lot of the comments I get are, I want to become an actor so that I can be somebody else, so that I can pretend to be someone else, right? And I'm not faulting them for that thought, because that it seems like from the outside looking in, it seems like that's what acting is, right? And then I think to rewire ourselves to thinking, to understanding that the best acting that you're ever going to do is if you could just be yourself and do all of these pre-written situations and pre-written lines and look like you're doing them for the first time, but as yourself with no character on top of it, you're golden. And then eventually you can add more to it in the future, but you're already doing amazing acting if you could just do that.
I love that. So true. Easier said than done, but every single day, if you focus on that, or every single audition, and you just get 1% better, that compounding effect, just like the consistency on the YouTube channel.
Exactly. but so let me add one more thing too.
Yeah.
It's because, we feel like we have to be a character, right? But what we don't realize is that we're all individual. We're already characters.
Yeah.
Like we all are, without adding anything on top of it. Each of us are individually a character already because we're all individual human beings. And then sometimes I've gotten the pushback of people saying, "Yeah, but if I be myself, that's boring, right? It feels like I'm not doing anything. It feels like I'm boring." But I'll say, like, you feel like you're boring because you've lived with yourself your entire life. You know yourself so well that when you do something, it feels like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm being me, and it's boring. But when someone doesn't know you, that looks, and if they're seeing a real human being living out a real moment, they're going to lean in because it looks interesting to them, because they are really being affected by something and not pretending. So that's, just more me on my soapbox about not trying to do too much and being yourself as an actor. I think you can have a solid career just doing that.
I love that, man. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, man. So happy to be here.
Everyone, if you've made it this far, this is your signal to subscribe, follow, comment, or if you loved the episode, send it over to a friend. Thanks so much for being here. We hope that this helped you in a big way, and we'll see you on the next one. Later.